In this video of Game of Theories, I'll introduce workplace aggression. What is workplace aggression? Its definition derives from the literature on the general human aggression. Workplace aggression is defined as behavior by people within or outside an organization that is intended to physically or psychologically harm an organizational member in the workplace. The most severe form of workplace aggression is fatal. It could lead to workplace homicide, for example, carried out by disgruntled ex-employees. The media may be more interested in covering news that a disgruntled fired employee carries out vengeful violence toward their supervisor. That violence is extremely serious, but the available evidence suggests that they are actually quite rare and represent only the tip of the iceberg of workplace aggression. Most workplace aggressive behaviors are non-fatal, ranging from physically aggressive behavior such as sexual harassment to psychologically aggressive behavior such as verbal insult. If you put "my boss is" in a Google search bar, the results are "my boss is toxic," "my boss is gaslighting me," "my boss is a micromanager harassing me," incompetent, passive-aggressive, and condescending. The results of Google search are generated by using machine learning algorithms that have learned from billions, if not more, of previous search queries from others to predict what you are looking for. It means if you experience workplace aggression, you are not alone. One study showed that 22% of Norwegian engineering employees reported being subjected to one or more of workplace aggressive behaviors at least monthly, and over 72% reported experience at least one incident of general harassment during the previous 6 months. The workplace aggressive behaviors from workers or supervisors included ridicule and insulting teasing, verbal abuse, rumors and gossips, offending remarks, reoccurring reminders on blunders, hostility or silence when entering a conversation, or devaluing of one's effort at work. Another study of public sector employees in the United States suggested that 71% of respondents reported at least some experience of workplace incivility during the previous 5 years, and 6% reported experiencing those behaviors many times. According to the data reported in the Handbook of Workplace Violence, psychological aggression was more prevalent than physical aggression. The most prevalent psychological aggressive behavior was shouting obscenities at you and screaming at you in anger, followed by insulting you or calling you names in front of other people, making an indirect or hidden threat, such as saying that something bad would happen to you, and threatening to physically harm you. The prevalent exposure to those workplace aggressive behaviors come from 3 sources: supervisors, co-workers, and members of the public. For example, customers, clients, patients, and parents. In Handbook of Workplace Violence, researchers reported the prevalence of workplace aggression by source. I used the data reported in the handbook and plotted them here. The results suggested that 13.5% of employees experienced aggression from their supervisors on a weekly and monthly basis, 15% from their coworkers, and 23.4% from members of the public. It appears that employees were more likely to experience aggression from members of the public than from supervisors or coworkers. And coworkers were more likely than supervisors to demonstrate aggressive behavior to other employees. This presents a challenge for leaders regarding how to mitigate workplace aggression that includes not only their own aggressive behavior, but also co-workers and the general public's aggressive behavior. Why are some people aggressive in the workplace? If we apply rational choice theory, we can assume that workplace aggressive behavior has a purpose or a goal, which is to help themselves achieve some outcome that they value when the costs of doing so is not too high. Some explanations have been proposed to explain workplace aggression. They include getting one's way, seeking justice, biases in assigning blame, expectations, expressing grievances, self-image and reputation, and thrill-seeking. First, getting one's way. Aggression is a social influence tactic to accomplish one's goal. Some people use it as a last resort, and others use it as a first resort. Regardless, aggression deters people from standing in our way. Second, seeking justice. In my earlier video on organizational justice, I introduced distributive justice, procedural justice, informational justice, and interactional justice. Unfair treatment evokes anger, which makes people impulsive and aggressive. Third, biases in assigning blame. People are often careless and excessive in their attributions of blame. Sometimes they can be described as blame mongers. That is, they tend to assign blame even when it is undeserved. They may fail to understand their adversary's perspective, or they may ignore exonerating circumstances, committing the fundamental attribution error. Sometimes they blame others to avoid self-blame. People working together on a task are motivated to blame the other person in cases of failure. Fourth, expectations. The expectations can come from temporal comparison and social comparison. Temporal comparison means we compare a present outcome with outcomes we experienced in the past. For example, we have a new supervisor who is tougher than our previous one. We may develop grievances. Social comparison means that people make a comparison with their peers. For example, both you and Jane get the same promotion with the same base salary, but you notice that Jane gets a larger salary raise. How do you feel? Fifth, expressing grievances. Most of the time, we don't express grievances. We exert self-control and try not to get into altercation in the workplace. Evidence suggests that a verbal attack is more than 4 times as likely to occur in conflicts involving strangers as it is in conflicts involving work relationships. 6. Self-image and reputation, which refers to using aggression to enhance or protect their identities. 7th, thrill-seeking. Some people enjoy seeking sensation. It could be explained by biological differences. People who engage in antisocial behavior tend to be physiologically under-aroused, as indicated by lower resting heart rate levels. Those people may seek out exciting activities to compensate for their physiological under-arousal and bring some physiological balance to their systems. The term workplace aggression is actually an umbrella term, including at least 12 similar and often overlapping constructs that describe workplace aggressive behaviors. First, bullying refers to situations where a person repeatedly is exposed to negative behaviors, that is, constant abuse, offensive remarks or teasing, ridicule or social exclusion on the part of coworkers, supervisors, or subordinates. Second, discrimination refers to people in a social category are being put at a disadvantage in the workplace relative to other groups with comparable potential or proven success. Third, exclusion and ostracism were defined as the perception that one is being ignored or excluded. How to measure exclusion or ostracism? Researchers developed a 10-item workplace ostracism scale. You can ask participants in your research to indicate their answers on a 7-point Likert scale. 1 means never, 2 means once in a while, 3 means sometimes, 4 means fairly often, 5 means often, 6 means constantly, and 7 means always. You can ask questions: how often others ignored you at work? Others left the area when you entered. Your greetings have gone unanswered at work. You involuntarily sat alone in a crowded lunchroom at work. Others at work shut you out of the conversation. Others at work treated you as if you were not there. Others at work did not invite you or ask you if you wanted anything if they went out for a coffee break. Fourth, general harassment refers to interpersonally hostile interactions as being yelled at, sworn at, or subjected to humiliating and demeaning behavior without explicit reference to gender or other legally protected social status characteristics. Fifth, incivility refers to low-intensity deviant behaviors such as rude and discourteous verbal and nonverbal behaviors enacted toward another organizational member with ambiguous intent to harm. Words are said, feelings are hurt. How do words hurt people's feelings? To answer this question, researchers use EEG and skin conductance recordings to compare the short-term impact of repeated verbal insults to that of repeated positive and neutral statements. EEG captures the electric sensitivity of the brain. Skin conductance recordings captures the electrical conductance of the skin, which varies with its moisture level. It is used as an indicator of psychological and physiological arousal because the sweat glands are controlled by the sympathetic nervous system, which is essential for preparing us for emergencies. When we are faced with a threat, the sympathetic nervous system is activated. Our heart rate increases and blood pressure rises. Our blood leaves the skin, stomach, and intestines and goes to the brain, heart, and muscles where it's needed. We sweat more and have goosebumps as the hair on our skin stands on end. Our pupils dilate. We breathe faster. All of those responses prepare us to address the threat. In an article titled, "Do People Get Used to Insulting Language?" published in Frontiers in Communication in 2022, researchers recruited 79 female participants and read a series of repeated statements that included insults, compliments, and neutral statements. The results showed an increased sensitivity of our brains to negative words compared to positive words. A verbal insult immediately catches our brain's attention as the emotional meaning of insults is retrieved from our long-term memory. The compliments elicit a less strong brain activity. The different brain activities also showed a negative bias in the amount of attention that is automatically allocated to negative versus positive interpersonal situations. The researchers concluded that verbal insults can trigger a mini slap to the face. 6. Interpersonal deviant behavior refers to employees engaging in violence, gossip, and theft that are targeted toward individuals in the workplace. 7. Mobbing refers to severe form of harassing people in organizations. It includes, first, attacking the victim with organizational measures. For example, the supervisor restricting a subordinate's possibilities to speak, or assigning senseless tasks. Second, social isolation. For example, co-workers refusing to communicate with someone by slighting glances and gestures, and being treated like air. Third, attacking the victim's private life. For example, imitating a person's gait, voice, or gestures to make someone look stupid. Fourth, physical violence. For example, sexual approaches, sexual offers, and the threat of physical violence. Fifth, attacking the victim's attitudes. For example, attacking someone's political beliefs and religious belief and making fun of someone's nationality. Sixth, verbal aggression. For example, verbal threat and shouting at or cursing loudly at someone. And seven, spreading rumors. 8. Psychological aggression refers to behavior that is characterized by a verbal or symbolic act. 9. Undermining refers to behavior intended to repeatedly hinder a worker's ability to establish and maintain positive interpersonal relationships, work-related success, and favorable reputation. Researchers have developed an undermining scale to measure the construct of undermining in the workplace. Participants were asked how often they had experienced a variety of behaviors from their coworkers and supervisors on a 7-point scale. The undermining behaviors include hurt your feelings, putting you down when question work procedures, undermining your effort to be successful on the job, insulting you, giving you the silent treatment, and spreading rumors about you. 10th, violence refers to instances of aggression that involve direct physical harm or threat of physical harm. 11th, victimization refers to individuals' perception of having been exposed, either momentarily or repeatedly, to the aggressive acts. 12th, work harassment refers to repeated activities with the aim of bringing mental but sometimes also physical pain and directed towards organizational members who, for one reason or another, are not able to defend themselves. Here I introduce a study published in 2022, which conducted a meta-analysis to investigate the relationship between leadership and workplace aggression. Researchers identified 140 empirical studies, which together contained 165 independent samples. The overall sample size was 155,190 participants. What were the results? Narcissistic, uncivil, authoritarian, and abusive leadership were associated with increased workplace aggression. Laissez-faire leadership, which was a passive form of leadership, was also associated with increased workplace aggression. All of those leadership styles fall under the category of destructive leadership, which refers to a leadership style that is not ineffective but toxic to organization. On the other hand, supportive, authentic, transformational, leader-member exchange, and ethical leadership were associated with reduced workplace aggression. Ethical leadership was most strongly negatively associated with workplace aggression. After learning about workplace aggression, how do you critique this construct? It covers a wide variety of behaviors, ranging from seemingly minor, non-physical behaviors such as being glared at, to more serious non-physical behaviors such as verbal threats, to actual physical assault with or without the use of a weapon. Given this wide range of behaviors, it is not surprising to find inconsistencies in the literature regarding how workplace aggression has been conceptualized and operationalized. Many review studies of workplace aggression have criticized this proliferation of conceptual and operational definitions of workplace aggression and have therefore recommended integration of those constructs. There is one construct I haven't mentioned yet, microaggression. The The term microaggression was used in the 1970s to describe African Americans' experience of subtle, stunning, often automatic, and nonverbal exchanges, which are put-downs. In the 2000s, the term microaggression referred to brief everyday exchanges that sent denigrating messages to people of color because they belong to a racial minority group. In recent years, the term microaggression has been used very frequently in trainings of diversity, equity, and inclusion. More recently, questions have been raised about the intentionality and the precise perimeters of subtle slights. Similarly, negative affect, which refer to an individual disposition to experience and report distress and unpleasurable engagement, was considered by some researchers as a potential covariable that might influence whether and how individuals perceive subtle slights. In a 2022 article titled Microaggression, Everyday Discrimination, Workplace Incivilities, and Other Subtle Slights at Work, a meta-synthesis published in Human Resource Development Review. Researchers conducted a systematic review of 338 papers on 3 constructs of subtle slights. They were microaggressions, everyday discrimination, and workplace incivilities. Despite the 3 constructs' similarities in low-intensity interactions, they differed in the type of violation. Microaggressions focused on slights and put-downs in the context of identity, particularly stereotype racial identity. Everyday discrimination focused on unfair treatment. Workplace incivility refers to the violation of workplace norms regarding politeness and respectful behavior. The researchers suggested that it's better to understand the subtle slight constructs in terms of 4 criteria: violation of fairness, identity, or respect; intensity, that is, how long or offensive the slight is perceived to be; duration, that is, whether the experience is frequent and occurs over a long period of time; and intent, that is, whether the slight is deliberate, unintentional, or ambiguous. In this video of Game of Theories, I introduce the construct of workplace aggression, how it has been defined differently, how prevalent it has been in the workplace, what are the sources of workplace aggression, what are the overlapping constructs of the workplace aggression. I also introduce the critique in terms of conceptual and operational inconsistencies. My question for leadership researchers is, how can you use your research to clear up the conceptual and operational consistencies of workplace aggression? My question for leadership practitioners is, how can you reduce workplace aggression? If you want to know more about how to build a theoretical framework for your research, I have published a book titled Demystify Theories, a workbook for developing theoretical frameworks of educational leadership research. The link of the book is in the description below.